with great pleasure to follow the Noble Lord, Lord Hendy, and indeed the Noble Lord Knight of Weymouth. I couldn't possibly repeat large amounts of what they said. I'm just going to seek to add a couple of points. First of all, on Amendment 186, in the name of the Noble Lord, Lord Hendy, also signed by the Noble Lords Hayne and Monks, which is looking at excluding suppliers for other improper behaviour, particularly mistreatment of workers. And I just really want to make the point that this is a change to the bill that I think would be welcomed by many good employers, because it helps them to ensure that they can compete against cowboys and potential cowboys. And I think it raises a point that I raised in our earlier discussion, that we were talking about, and there's continuing debate on this issue, which I'm sure we'll take to report, about supporting small and medium enterprises. What we've seen develop in many cases is small and medium enterprises. Not all of them are angels, of course, but they know their workers as individuals. They very often tend to be better employers, whereas you have large multinational companies that treat their employers like blocks of labour to be moved around on a chessboard, and ensuring that bad labour practice is punished is something that I would assert would be something of benefit to small and medium enterprises, which certainly all round your Lordship's house agreed was something we thought was a good idea. Moving on to the amendments in the name of the Noble Lord Knight of Weymouth, particularly 54 and the linked 535. I think it's really useful to put this in context, and I'm going to refer to a Unison report titled Outsourcing the Cuts, Pay and Employment Effects of Contracting Out. And what this report focuses on is some very detailed case studies, but it looks at how what we have seen, particularly over the past decade, is an increased work intensity forced on staff with greater job insecurity and low or non-existent increases in pay. And that's happened right across the UK economy, but it's been particularly the case with outsourced, with contracts of the kind we're talking about here. And as the report says, outsourced public servants are at the sharp end of pressure, and that's the circumstances we've been. And as the Noble Lord, Lord Knight, I think, alluded to, but I really want to pick up on, is the quality of life that we have in the UK. The quality of our economy is acutely related to the nature of that work. Now, what Amendment 54 in particular says, the contracting authority must take account of the impacts on local good work. And we have low productivity, extremely poor public health, physical and mental, communities that have truly been hollowed out by low pay, where no one has any money to actually support the local independent businesses. It's a spiral downwards, and we have to get out of that spiral downwards. And what these amendments are doing is working towards putting in provision to change that, which, and I would point to the government's levelling up agenda, the government indeed says that it wants to do, because this is very much a regionally based agenda. And just to pick up one practical point, an example of how this might be used. Let's imagine we have two bids for a contract, and one of those bidders is a company that's trialling, as many now are, or indeed fully implemented, a 4-day working week as standard with no loss of pay. Now, what this amendment would do, I would suggest, is saying that it must be taken into account the impacts that that can have on the local community. Think of all of the extra time that people would have for volunteering, the extra time that people would have for childcare, the impacts that would have on the quality of local life. This is building in all things that the government says as part of its agenda. I'm not sure if perhaps it was more Cameronian, but the idea of communities providing local services and through volunteering. But I think that's probably still part of the government's agenda. So this is really delivering things that the government says it wants to deliver, and I believe these are truly impressive improvements to this bill.